Всем добрый день. Сегодня мы поговорим в эфире
Good afternoon.
то, кто ломает российские баг-баунти.
Today we'll talk about who is breaking Russian bug bounties.
Мы занимаемся развитием баг-баунти стендов.
We are dealing with the
Гости.
development of bug bounty standoff. We have two great guests here, and we'll tell you
Почему мы позвали? Вот, значит, с
a
нами
great story about one of them, why we call him this Seva.
недели две назад я был
We met with him 2 weeks ago. I was in St. Petersburg,
в заведении, чтобы посидеть там, поработать, комп подзарядить. И
and I went to a place to recharge my batteries of my computer. I
у нас
heard that people are talking there, and
слишком
it turned out we have too many friends and
все вот сегодня здесь.
together, so Всеволод is here today.
Уже представил все
Since
про себя
I
немножко.
introduce him a little bit, so he'll tell us a little bit about himself.
Зовут Всеволод, я специалист.
As you said, my name is Всеволод, I'm bug hunter and probably just a good person.
Вот, и с нами еще Алексей. Алексей сейчас
And we also have Alexei. He will introduce himself too.
топ-2, топ-3.
Топ-3, после Хакса
Топ-3.
топ-3.
Топ-3 на нашем
Top
Bounty Platform.
3
Когда мы
bug bounty platform.
Но он еще обещал.
He was on our bug bounty platform. He said he's going to come back. So tell us where you work.
Говорит, CTO компании по инфобезу.
I'm CTO of
Занимаюсь бэкэндом, пентестами, и вот то туда, то сюда.
Info security company. I do pen tests and bug bounties. So since my childhood, 26 years, I'm doing this since 9 years.
Кстати, у вас
Yeah.
вообще, как вы занимаетесь бакхантингом? Для вас это
So how do you bug hunting? So it's a full-time or it's part-time job?
Скорее part-time, это такая
For
интересная.
me, it's a part-time job. It's an interesting thing that I do.
У тебя есть пентесты, есть работа.
When you have pen test and you do the work,
Необходимо как-то переключиться, потому что иначе ты
but we need to
взгляд получается на.
switch
А когда смотришь другие уже публичные компании, которые есть,
switch your activity, so to speak, and when you look at other companies who do bug bounty platform, so you and you kind of actually kind of take off some load from your shoulders, kind of looking into different areas. So when you help them,
начинает работать сейчас, там,
so your brain kind of works with different things, and that's what helps. And this is so interesting for me. It's a hobby,
приносит там какие-то баллы,
but hobby that
когда ты прыгаешь с топ-2 на топ-3.
brings me some money when you go from top 2 to top 3 and all that.
способ разнообразить.
For you, it's a way to diversify your routine, right?
Любой
Yeah.
отдых это, ну, смена деятельности, это классный отдых. такой.
Because any rest that you have is just you need to change the type of activity you do. And for me, it's a type of resting.
А,
So when you do bug hunting,
Давно ты занимаешься бакхантингом?
how long have you been doing bug hunting?
Когда не было баг-баунти платформ,
When they didn't have bug bounty platforms nowhere
образом,
in the world,
помню, когда с отцом изучали вообще программирование, я начну из...
when I was studying programming together with my father, so I kind of started from afar, and my father told me,
от дурака, да?
let's make here the
И когда я смотрел различные ходил по интернету,
foolproof
и писал там,
component.
передал,
And
не получая за это ничего, почти,
so I was making these little
уже что-то там,
elements, and I was doing it kind of voluntarily and
но иногда
for free.
передаю так вот,
And
когда знаю людей, знаю.
And then it kind of grew.
Для меня это более такое факультативное, но все равно, как показывает,
For me, it's more like fun stuff to do, you know, practice to do something useful for people.
Ты
So, and for you,
part-time бакхантишь.
ну,
bug hunting for you is part-time, full-time?
ну,
So I also do it part-time,
работа, и она
just because I have my main work.
удовольствие, чем бакхантинг.
Actually, that I enjoy more than bug hunting. Bug hunting is more like a way to kind of switch and to look at something new. It correlates with my working tasks, my work tasks. But when you look at something through bug bounty, it's a different experience. It's something that I do at work
технологии, которые я смотрю,
because tech technology may change that I'm looking at and things that I'm dealing with.
как мозг немного размять, когда он застоялся.
And sometimes it just helps you to kind of massage your brain, so to speak.
Мой
I'm smiling because it's similar to what I do. So we have a similar background. For me, bug hunting is also
на сети,
to master some new technologies,
допустим, никогда там в других проектах.
look at the network that you didn't see before.
А как вы находите вдохновение? То есть вам как-то...
How do you find inspiration?
Допустим, и вы нашли
For
какой-то...
example, you sit at pen test and you find some strange activity there, and you kind of think, "Oh, it's interesting," and then I just kind of get down to it a little later and maybe bug counting, or maybe you found some new vector and you decided to check this, and so you just kind of resting and you. How do you get this inspiration to do this stuff?
И Zero Day, то есть обнаружены аналогичные
It's a zero day also.
случайности, что ли?
It kind of happens
Как заранее запрограммировано.
incidentally, but kind of programmed incident.
Понимает, про что я.
So those who understand, they understand what I'm talking about.
Здесь вдохновение, ну просто желание, этим надо жить.
Well, inspiration here, you kind of live with this. You know, you need to understand this, and you need to enjoy what you do.
Придумать, продумать, как работает система, как
When you can think how the system could work and how to trick
сделали какие-то
the developers. So maybe they put some protection measures that they didn't think through, and it's just so great when you can find
вдохновляет делать.
something and it kind of better than it just inspires you to do more.
Ну,
What about you, Всеволод?
вот такая прям мотивация, стимул возникает, когда я, например,
I get my motivation or
какое-то, например,
incentive
по работе или просто
when I'm working on some application at work or I research something upper source and I find an interesting vector.
заключается в том, что
And specificity of my hunting is that I'm hunting
у меня
in a very narrow scope, and I have quite a full idea of infrastructure of the company that I'm looking at.
я
And
примерно
I can recall
условно год назад
that I saw a similar thing maybe a year ago
N, вот.
in stacks of company N, so to speak. And I can go there and look how it's working today
Случай,
comparing to a year before.
CVE в одном очень популярном пакете для
For example, I registered SVE in this JVS package, and
зайти,
for me it was very interesting to
как вообще
look
фиксит,
how
что у них там происходит.
people work with this.
Не платят, но хотя бы
Many people don't pay for zero day, but
критичное.
it would be great to bring some use to people because this vulnerability is a key vulnerability. But how do you choose those companies to study? Some people are specialized in fintech, some in food tech, and so how do you find for yourself the sector of the economy, or you kind of study any company? For me, what's interesting to look at
Я понимаю, что там происходит, то есть мне не интересно смотреть
things that I understand. For me, it's not interesting to look at bug bounty programs
продукты,
as I'm an end user
нужен.
when I don't know why I need this product.
По
I
принципу
look at the program
интересно вообще
based on the principle what I'm interested in, what the company does.
юзером этой компании.
I can be a user of the company,
Выгода получения у меня
and
заключается в том, что
my benefit is that
будут в безопасности,
my data, my personal data, would be protected.
никто не украдет условные деньги.
And when my data is fixed, then nobody's going to choose
А это...
my data.
Мне стало интересно, было ли
I'm
так,
curious.
что во время... Просто, типа, ты пользуешься приложением и понимаешь, что у него какой-то...
Did you have that when you're kind of using an application, then application kind of behaves strangely,
Вот так не должно...
and you think to yourself, what?
Я не знаю, видел какое-то приложение,
It's not going to work like this.
страницу, и там на
You
какой-то...
kind of look in this video application, and for the 10th or 15th update, you see the data
кэш настроен.
of a different
Грубо говоря,
user, and because their cache is so badly
у тебя опыт общения
set up, so you get somebody's data. Did you have this experience with companies when you find some security bug
сдавал, ты не сдавал
that you would give it to them, you would tell them about it? So
баунти.
did you try to get in touch with a company that didn't have bug bounty? Yes, I had this experience, but not that
Вот
I had this page with somebody's data on it because of the cache drawback.
довольно сложная
I may see that something is acting up, and I can see that it might be something complex functionality.
люди в этом фейлятся.
In my experience,
Продуктом пользуюсь каждый день.
people fail using some products.
Но часто возникает
I'm not doing a big research, but sometimes
очевидная бага. Ну, просто там
I can see this obvious bug
у
there.
меня был случай, когда в одной компании
Recently, I had this example from the WebSocket.
отправлялся у них,
A user ID would be sent.
но было, он не сверялся с сессионной.
You could replace it.
Вот.
It wasn't
На email, то есть у них не было никакой баг-баунти программы, я им написал,
confirming with the internal cookie.
вот какая-то такая
So,
ситуация, я
so I just called them up and I said, "This is the situation. I'm concerned about my data. Could you
волнировали меня
fix that?" They ignored me for
спустя
2 weeks, and 2 weeks later,
мы передадим.
they got back to me and they said, "So we'll tell our team about this." But so this vulnerability still remains.
Сервисом пользоваться.
I think it's classic.
Леш, а ты, у тебя был опыт
What
репортинга
about you, Alexei? Did you have this experience when you reported about vulnerability or like
компаний, у которых нет баг-баунти?
application acting up with the companies that don't have bug bounty?
Шел еще
When I came to bug bounty, I came to it before these platforms
то есть
appeared, and of course I started with this. Of course it was WhatsApper.
по 2 недели, по 2 месяца можно было
Oftentimes, 2 weeks, 2 months, you might not get any feedback.
и не отвечали где-то на...
Sometimes they would fix it and they would never respond to you, so it was different.
В основном люди адекватные.
Mainly,
То есть
people
зависит от того, насколько корректно ты напишешь,
were good.
тебя не воспримут каким-то...
But it depends on how you're going to write to them. So if they're not going to take you for
Если ты пишешь
black hat
почтового ящика, в ней,
hacker, especially if you're writing from an unknown mailbox
конечно, немножечко странно.
to the company from some hackers
Никому не понравится, что
community, so they're not going to like it. So nobody will like if somebody's breaking into their company. So when you
заказать себе пентесты.
nobody asked you, so you go to bug bounty, you can use different pen tests, you can
Безопасности, да?
check your own vulnerability, but here is somebody's writing to you, mails it from Proton Mail.
Никому не советуем
Of course, we don't suggest that you can try to break in somebody's company, but
По поводу того, что там находятся, предположим, там мои данные, данные моих
I
родственников,
agree that when there is data of my data and data of my family,
именно теми сервисами
and of course I use those services and look at those services that I use
за эти
where I have my data, my personal data, and that I'm concerned about, and I don't want this data to go anywhere and to be leaked.
вот это благо приходится
That's why
А какие
I'm doing what I'm doing.
пользуетесь? Вы бы хотели,
What services that you use
сейчас нет.
that you want to see on bug bounty, services that are not there yet.
с широким скопом. Конкретно называть крайне сложно, потому что их
It's very hard to say, to name maybe some fintechs or something. No?
маркетплейсы, я думаю, было бы неплохо.
Marketplaces, that would be great to have them there and more of them. And from banking area, yes, I understand it's very difficult to bring them to bug bounty because
Регуляторов, которые...
there are many regulators that are watching them.
Ну, пожалуй, вот где критичные данные находятся.
Perhaps this is where the critical data is.
Там другие
There is Gosuslugi website, this public services website, and on bug bounty, and some nuances and
даже смотреть
bug hunters, they even afraid to
токен,
look at it. So if you didn't write a token in the header, so and did some malicious act there, so it consequences can be quite bad. So then you look more at some commercial companies.
Вот я
And here I think our ideas about it are different. So I always thought about how the scope of Russian bug bounty could be extended.
как быстро и эффективно расширить скоп, это как раз-таки добавить
How to do that
информации, потому что
is to add the public corporations,
это
but add such company as Russian Railways. It's hundreds of services,
тоже не сотни доменов.
dozens of them, and domains and subdomains.
Грубо говоря, скоп увеличивает кратно.
And it increases the scope
Насчет того, что многие бакхантеры
by magnitudes.
вот то, что за ними приедут, на самом деле это правда проблема. Я считаю, что
The problem is that you may be arrested for that, and so anything bug hunting in this case should be
придется как-то регулировать на более...
somehow should be regulated on the high level.
В целом я бы хотел, чтобы
And in general,
вот какие-то госсайты, вот сейчас
when we look at some public websites,
которые на
and this is actually initiative of the Ministry of Digitalization,
и такой резонанс.
and they do it on your platform, and it's great. It's actually quite surprised
И
it had within the community.
ты заходил
And it
на
would be great that in the future, when you go to the website of Russian Railways,
это госкорпорации, у них
and and you would look at it and see that they don't have bug bounty, and you would be surprised that they don't have bug bounty. So it should be, you see, other way around. So the all these public services, they have to have bug bounty, and for our citizens, it should be like a norm. That's really great, and I absolutely agree with you. And I hope there will be such initiatives to regulate it, so that,
допустим, работают с персданными, там,
for example, companies that work with some data and passports, and so that they have bug bounty,
новая проверка, ну,
because it's a great
На прочность. А у меня
test,
такой вопрос. Предположим,
resilience test.
компания, которые
Say
не готовы платить много, но
there are companies that can pay a lot to me,
ваши данные, вы будете
and they will be processing your critical data. Will you look for vulnerabilities in those companies?
Да, почему бы нет?
In general, yes, why not?
Не
I understand those people who are
там, где
not looking for vulnerabilities where they're not paid a lot of money, because many people who do it full-time,
тяжелая работа,
this is a full-time job,
нельзя обвинять их в какой-то
very hard one,
меркантильности.
and you can't blame them being
В целом без разницы, заплатят мне за
too
юзер,
greedy.
платят.
In some way, I don't care if they're going to pay me from finding vulnerability or not.
Получаю, когда
I'm more interested in those like karma points whether they get when I
вот продолжая
help people like this. But continuing what you said,
регулирование, чего
when Anatoly said about regulating,
ввести бакбаунти,
what I
на
am
самом деле, это
concerned about it,
первый шаг,
to
просто
introduce bug bounty is just too little. It's just the first step.
компании, которые self-hosted,
Because some Russian companies that
сталкивался с ситуацией,
launch bug bounty,
заходишь через год на сайт,
and I had this, you find a bug, you tell them, and 1 year later you go to their website and you see the bug again, and that's a problem. And then the question is, so
заплатили, и они даже не...
why would you do it? So,
Если
and if they don't pay you and they didn't even fix the bug, so why even bother?
мне вот
Okay, clear.
у нас эфир такой мотивационный в плане
Since our
бакхантеров,
broadcast is more like
люди, которые там вредят,
inspirational, so the bug hunters that not who are
просто
doing something malicious with the masks on, and they're actually great guys, so their interests and they have jobs and they just want to help.
потому как вы вообще
And for me, it would be interesting to hear what was your experience, how you got to bug hunting.
типа, вернее, стоит ли учиться этому?
Да.
То есть стоит ли какой-то
But better to say,
или можно
is it worth
обучиться?
if it's worth training this to learn
научиться искать уязвимость,
how to
полезно для
learn how to find vulnerabilities? So it would be
К этому должны
useful for the company, for yourself. Well, first of all, you have to have
технических навыков,
an inclination for that. Besides the
умений в разработке, в администрировании
skills,
должна лежать душа, потому что у меня
and so you need to like it.
работают в IT,
Because I have many friends who are working in IT, in development, and they're not interested in information security.
безопасный код, а с точки зрения
Not from the point of view of writing a secure code, but in terms of finding vulnerabilities. They don't get as excited about it. So that's why, first of all, these are
поводу
desire to do that,
образования и так далее.
and training, education about it. So maybe for some people it's good and it can help. I can't say anything about myself because
Я скорее самоучка.
with education it's not like that. I'm more kind of self-trained.
Стал получаться.
Since when I was 9, I started kind of, hitting the keys on the keyboard, and then
То есть такой
this is how I got interested.
интерес, горящие глаза, да, как
So interest, passion, as you said,
и, много времени.
and a lot of time, right?
Свободного времени, да.
A lot of free time to actually do that. Yeah, you can say that.
Ну,
So what do you think?
вот есть интересная вещь, про которую мало
There is this interesting thing, and for some reason, not many bug hunters
и этим заинтересован.
talk about this, and why to be interested in bug hunting.
Существует фактически
In bug hunting,
репутация. Что я под этим
they don't have such thing as reputation. What I mean, so if you develop yourself as programmer and you go to freelance
заказов и условного большого резюме,
exchange and without a big resume, there is not big chance that you're gonna get a good job, and it's gonna be low paid. But in bug hunting, it can be you can be just a schoolboy from a village. They're using typing on Windows XP, and you can get 500,000 rubles. When I was in my 8th grade, this is when I found my first bug.
Баунти?
А?
В какой баг
Which bug bounty?
Баг баунти?
In Yandex bug bounty.
Прям
Да.
That's good, actually.
Я в Яндексе так ничего не нашел.
When I was bug hunting, I didn't find anything in Yandex.
Шуточный вопрос, поскольку SEO в основном
It's
бакант.
kind of joking question. So Seva bug hunting hunts on Yandex mainly. But there was one thing there when I was very actively bug hunting there when it was 10x,
Ну, грубо говоря, и я
because I myself,
с моими друзьями бакхантерами вместе.
I got it together with my friends who are also bug hunters. We were studying it and quite good numbers we could get there.
Такой вопрос был, что должна сделать платформа, чтобы хотелось на ней бакантить?
What does a platform
И такой, блин,
should do, excuse me, what a platform should do to
дело, работа, а ты такой, нет, вот я сяду, пробаканчу.
Но это побольше
to
скопа, больше программ.
get your
Ну, как
attention. So
всё равно с
a bigger scope,
размером
more programs, and the story with the amount of money they pay actually motivates those who are the beginners. And I agree with
рейтинг, некие баллы, которые ты
my colleague. There's certain ratings, certain points that you get,
Здесь же
which make you happy.
привлекут начинающих, которые
And I think the amounts they pay will bring more beginners, and they will be able to give you more for this money.
Хотелось бы, ну, помимо, очевидно, помимо там больше компаний, которые можно посмотреть и поисследовать,
So besides the
важна и
option to see more companies, what's also important
накопленный твой опыт, накопленная какая-то репутация.
is the experience and reputation that you
Ты был условно там,
gained
там топ-2, там топ-3.
ну, тоже,
on that platform.
есть.
да.
To be in top 3 and top 2, right?
Хотим переделать эту систему и сделать ее чуть
So I would like to revamp that system and to make it more interesting,
на работу. Потому что как, ну,
so that it would impact the work more.
рейтинг, ну,
Because when you have rating,
хостятся сами, да, просто
many bug bounty programs, they kind of
может быть, что
host themselves. So they say, we might give you money, might not, and here are the researchers that are great researchers, and their rating is like top 100. And when you get into this rating,
где-то вот
but this rating in some page somewhere on the internet, and only like one person would look at it, and you're the only ones who are in that rating, and
очень мало, мало какого-то импакта, что ли, мне кажется.
you don't get much.
Ну, вот мы
from
хотим
it.
передумать как раз по механике. Так что я потом вас еще
Я бы
поспрашиваю
даже
про это.
добавил по
So
поводу,
I'll ask you more.
по поводу скоупа. То есть уже те
I
программы, которые есть,
would actually add about the scope and about the programs. So those programs that exist, it would be great if we can
и
expand the scope.
Bug Bounty перешел в пентест,
And I wouldn't say that bug bounty should be turned into a pen test, because pen test is like a different story here.
те же
But oftentimes those penetrations of
скоупа, которые
malicious actors, they happen not only as part of the scope that vendors were talking, they can penetrate through the partners. And I do understand that the procedure could be quite complicated,
приближение
but I think that would be an ideal world to have such a training ground. So in other words, to expanding the scope,
Ну, хотя
not the main one that is indicated there, but it would be great to have different vectors to
подумай.
receive these things. And we'll need to think about it. Yes, so we have one last question to ask.
Wildcard.
Wildcard.
Программа, когда все домены
This bug bounty software when all domains are open to be hacked, or some limited scope. No, limited scope,
Очевидно, что нельзя давать
because clearly you can't give access to all domains.
разработчиков, что у них
You need to understand the developers and,
сервис, который
well, first of all, the service
тестирован, ты выложишь его, если особенно
might not be fully tested, and if you bring it up, and this is just an open program, and you have like the 300 accesses, and then
надо уловить эту грань,
so you have to be very careful about this.
ты не даешь
So,
дозволенность.
so you don't have to be like strictly
Такое мнение.
limiting them, but not too much either.
Ответ от вас требуется.
And very small question, small answer, please.
Пентест.
Bug bounty or pen test? Pen test.
У меня нет ответа.
I don't have an answer for this question. Both are useful. Yeah.
аспект.
Когда-нибудь расскажу вам историю про багу, которую нам сдали на, ну,
I'll tell you a story about the bug
на стендов. Ну, вот,
that they gave us on standoff
отвечать на этот вопрос наиболее полно.
that answers this question in full. So, but later.
Были Алексей,
So we had Alexei and Vsevolod,
Ольга и Анатолий.
Olga and Anatoly.
Вот. Спасибо всем, спасибо, что
Thank you very much.
в эфире.
Thank you that you were with